The Vraytech Dominion had conquered over 300 worlds. Their name alone was enough to make entire civilizations surrender before a single shot was fired. For centuries, they had swept across the galaxy, an unrelenting force that crushed opposition with ruthless efficiency. Their warriors stood taller than any sentient species, their exoskeletal armor impenetrable to conventional weapons. Their minds, engineered for war, calculated every battle with cold, surgical precision. Empires had crumbled before them. Species older than humanity had begged for mercy. None had received it. The Vraytech left no survivors. To them, conquest was not just an objective, it was their purpose. The weak existed only to be eradicated. And now, their warships hovered over Earth. General Krovnal watched the blue planet from the bridge of his dreadnought. The humans had been classified as primitive, bipedal, mammalian, short-lived. Their technology was centuries behind the Dominions. Their biology was frail, their bodies soft and unimposing. Conquering them would be a formality, nothing more. A transmission was sent to every major city. You are now subject to the Vraytech Dominion. Surrender immediately. Resistance will not be tolerated. Silence. Krovnal's mandibles twitched in irritation. Fear was the universal response to their arrival. Why was this species hesitating? Perhaps they were so far beneath his notice that their minds could not comprehend the gravity of their situation. He gave the order. The invasion began. Dropships descended, deploying legions of Vraytech warriors into human cities. They moved with precision, armored figures emerging from the smoke of impact craters. Their weapons, molecular destabilizers, reduced obstacles to dust. The streets were eerily empty. It was too easy. Then, the first shot rang out. A Vraytech warrior fell. Another shot, another soldier down. Snipers. Unexpected. Krovnal growled. No matter. The weak often attempted last, desperate stands. His troops pushed forward, expecting the human defenders to break within moments. But they didn't. The humans fought with a kind of madness. They fired from windows, from rooftops, from beneath wreckage. They did not stand in formation like the species of Dominion had crushed before. They moved, unpredictable and erratic, never staying in one place long enough to be targeted. They turned the very landscape against their invaders, using knowledge of their own terrain to set ambushes. Vraytech soldiers attempted to adapt, but the humans had already changed the rules of engagement. Explosions erupted from beneath their feet, improvised traps. Grenades made from repurposed fuel cells tore through Vraytech armor. Entire squads vanished in alleyways, only for their remains to be found hours later, their weapons stripped, their bodies defiled with human graffiti. Krovnal watched the battle reports with growing unease. The humans were outnumbered, outgunned, and yet they did not fight like prey. They fought like something else entirely. Worse still, they laughed. His soldiers reported humans taunting them, mocking them even as they bled. Vraytech were conditioned to instill terror. Yet, the humans welcomed the fight. Some fought with weapons that should not have worked against Dominion armor, and yet they did. A soldier's dying breath was not a plea for mercy, but a final insult. This was not how wars were supposed to unfold. There was an order to things. The strong conquered and the weak perished. But humans did not seem to understand their place, or they simply refused to accept it. The first day ended with more Vraytech losses than expected. A minor setback, Krovnal told himself. Tomorrow, the humans would be crushed. But by the third day, the Vraytech warriors whispered among themselves. Something was wrong. This was not war. This was a nightmare. They were beginning to fear. Krovnal had never known uncertainty. Every war he had fought followed a pattern. Superior force met inferior opposition. Overwhelming might crush resistance, and victory was inevitable. But against humans, something was wrong. The streets should have been silent by now, the cities under Dominion control. Instead, his forces were bogged down in endless firefights, navigating labyrinths of destruction where every shadow concealed death. Humans did not fight for survival alone. They fought as if they enjoyed the struggle. The reports from the front lines made no sense. Dominion soldiers described battles that defied logic. Humans attacking in the dead of night with nothing but knives, their faces painted in strange patterns. Entire squads went missing, their last transmissions filled with shouts of confusion before static consumed them. The humans exploited every weakness, their tactics impossible to predict. They jammed Dominion communications, intercepted orders, and used their own technology against them. They adapted in real time, shifting strategies with an instinct that was neither calculated nor planned. It was feral. A battalion stationed in an occupied zone received a distress signal from their own forces. They moved in to assist, only to find nothing but abandoned vehicles and flickering streetlights. Moments later, explosions erupted from every direction. It was an ambush, but the humans had never sent signal. They had mimicked Dominion transmissions to lure them in. Krovnal reviewed every engagement, searching for a pattern, a flaw he could exploit. But there was no pattern. The humans did not follow the rules of war. They adapted too quickly, striking from the shadows, forcing the Dominion to fight a battle they had never trained for. He deployed elite shock troops, warriors bred specifically for counterinsurgency. They were cut down within hours. One soldier's final message echoed in the command chamber. They are not afraid to die. Fear was spreading through the ranks. Dominion warriors who once stood unshaken now hesitated before entering battle zones. The enemy did not break. They did not surrender. They fought with a savagery that no species had ever displayed before. Capture humans only deepened the mystery. They did not beg for their lives. They did not tremble before execution. Instead, they smirked, as if they knew something the Dominion did not. Some even laughed. One prisoner, bloodied and beaten, leaned in close before his execution and whispered, "You have no idea what you started." The final sign of disaster came when an entire Dominion base went silent. Recon teams arrived to find the facility intact, but every soldier inside was dead. No explosives, no signs of battle. The security footage showed the truth. Humans had infiltrated the base one by one, eliminating soldiers with precision and silence. The last recording showed a single human standing in the command room, looking directly into the security feed, and saying only one word: "Run." For the first time in Dominion history, an order was given that had never been spoken before: retreat. The war had become a disaster. What was supposed to be a swift and decisive victory had turned into an unrelenting nightmare. Krovnal's forces were stretched thin, their supply lines in shambles, and their morale shattered. This was not how the Dominion fought. They had always relied on brute force, overwhelming their enemies with superior numbers and technology. But against humans, neither mattered. Every attempt to regain control ended in failure. Standard Dominion tactics were useless. Human forces didn't engage in traditional battles. They struck in the shadows, disappeared into ruined landscapes, and returned only when the Dominion least expected it. Every retreating unit found itself hunted. No world had ever resisted them like this. No species had ever fought so ruthlessly. His commanders, once unshakable, now spoke in hushed voices, afraid to admit what was happening. Krovnal did not need their words. He could see it himself. His soldiers flinched at the sound of gunfire. Their movements had become hesitant, their formations loose. The Dominion did not fear death, until now. A counteroffensive was ordered, one final attempt to crush the resistance. A planetary bombardment, a scorched earth strategy. If the humans would not surrender, their world would be reduced to ash. The first bombardment never landed. The orbital fleet was suddenly thrown into chaos, hacked, sabotaged, infiltrated from within. Human operatives had boarded the Dominion's own warships, disabling targeting systems, venting oxygen from control rooms, turning their own weapons against them. No species had ever dared something so reckless, so impossible. The command ship lost contact with half the fleet within minutes. Krovnal's attempts to restore order were met with silence, then panic, then screams. His soldiers, trained to be the galaxy's finest warriors, were being slaughtered in their own corridors. Then, the final message came through, relayed from the bridge of the Dominion's flagship. A human voice, calm, deliberate. "You are no longer the apex predators." A moment later, The flagship turned its guns toward the Dominion fleet and fired. It was over. The invasion force, once mighty beyond measure, was gone. The warriors who had never known defeat had been crushed. The Dominion's greatest fleet, commandeered by the very species they sought to enslave. Crovnall, now alone in the ruins of his war, understood the truth too late. They had not invaded a weaker species. They had provoked monsters. The galaxy watched in stunned silence. The impossible had happened. The most feared warriors in existence had been defeated, not by a technologically superior race, not by overwhelming force, but by humans. A species of Dominion had deemed irrelevant, a species that had turned war into an art form. Survivors of the invasion returned to the Dominion homeworld as broken soldiers, haunted by memories they refused to speak of. The Dominion's leadership demanded answers. How had their greatest fleet fallen? How had their warriors, undefeated for centuries, been crushed by a species so young? The soldiers who had faced humanity could only offer one response. They don't fight wars. They end them. Word spread quickly. The Galactic Council, which had long feared the Dominion's expansion, now feared something else entirely. Humanity had done more than just win. They had adapted, evolved, and surpassed. They had taken the Dominion's weapons, their ships, their technology, and improved them overnight. They had studied the Vraytech, like a predator studies prey. And now, they were looking outward. The Dominion, once the most powerful force in the galaxy, sent an emissary to Earth, a plea for peace. Never before had they bowed to another species. Never before had they feared an enemy enough to surrender unconditionally. Yet, here they were, standing before the humans they had once sought to enslave, begging for mercy. Humanity did not demand vengeance. They did not seek extermination. They simply smiled, that same unnerving expression the Dominion had never learned to understand. They did not wipe out their former enemies. They absorbed them. Vraytech soldiers, once the terror of the stars, now served under human commanders. Their war machines, once symbols of conquest, now bore Earth's insignia. The Dominion did not fall. It was reborn under humanity's rule, and the rest of the galaxy took notice. Empires that had once dismissed humanity as insignificant now feared them more than the Dominion ever had, because they understood the truth. The most dangerous species was not the one that conquered. It was the one that refused to be conquered. A final broadcast echoed across the stars. A message from Earth, simple and clear. We never wanted war, but if you bring it to us, we will show you what survival truly means. The warning was understood. The galaxy would never make that mistake again.